Now they're saying, no, it's you. It's the white guy. I mean, I told people a long time ago this was coming. We could see it coming a million miles away. Paul Watson over at prisonplanet.com will continue to watch your very informative reports, the video reports you're posting to prisonplanet.tv, and also the news articles you're writing. I know it's almost, well, it's past midnight over there where you're at, and we'll see you back tomorrow. Paul Watson, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
All right, there goes Paul Watson. Well, look, this show's supposed to be 30 minutes long, and I've got TV networks and stations that want to pick it up. But here in the fledgling launch of Infowars Nightly News, it can be 45 minutes. It can be an hour long as we get the show launched by 7 o'clock Central. Now, we're going to go back to the subject of what's happening in the economy on the other side with Gerald Celente. But as we take you out to break, Ron Paul has gotten aggressive, and that's what we need to see. They've got a new Gallup poll out showing he's only 4 points behind the leader, Rick Perry, in Iowa. And he's now put out a new ad titled, Rick Perry, Texas cheerleader for Al Gore.
The establishment called him extreme and unelectable. They said he was the wrong man for the job. It's why a young Texan named Ron Paul was one of only 4 congressmen to endorse Ronald Reagan's campaign for president, believing in Reagan's message of smaller government and lower taxes. After Reagan, Senator Al Gore ran for president, pledging to raise taxes and increase spending, pushing his liberal values. And Al Gore found a cheerleader in Texas named Rick Perry. Rick Perry helped lead Al Gore's campaign to undo the Reagan Revolution, fighting to elect Al Gore president of the United States. Now, America must decide who to trust, Al Gore's Texas cheerleader or the one who stood with Reagan. Ron Paul, restore America now.
We are back. It's Infowars Nightly News here Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv/news. We are expanding our operations against the global crime syndicate. We are in their face in defense of human liberty and a new renaissance for humanity in the fight against global banker occupation. And someone who's been on the very front line of that fight for a very long time is the best-selling author and researcher, top trends forecaster Gerald Celente. And with more on what's happening with our economy and with a breakdown of future trends is Gerald Celente joining us from New York. Gerald, thank you for coming on with us tonight.
Well, I like being on a news show with real news.
Well, thank you, my friend. Good to have you here. So much is unfolding. You've predicted the collapse that we're now entering, but still the very banksters that promised us that they would fix everything are telling us, well, things aren't going well, but don't worry, we're getting record bonuses, and it's not a problem. Just continue to give us trillions in bailouts. In fact, Bernanke is back in the news today saying U.S. banks' exposure to Europe is manageable, but it turns out these foreign banks are the ones that basically own our banks. Gerald Celente, what do you say to that?
Well, I would ask public enemy number one, Osama bin Bernanke, why then have they pumped in, what was it, $1.2 trillion into foreign banks and U.S. banks, such as Societe Generale, the Royal Bank of Scotland? If all these banks are doing so great, what do they need our dough for? And no, the exposure is on both sides of the pond, and there's no way out. As a matter of fact, you know, they call this guy Nouriel Roubini Dr. Doom, and they keep talking about his forecasts. And, you know, he comes on after things sometimes happen and then readjusts them, as he did today in Bloomberg. And he said, I thought a few months ago that the perfect storm would be 2013. Well, in 2010, he said that we weren't going into a double-dip recession. But here's what he goes on to say. And remember, he's a member of the White Shoe Boy Club. You need to restore economic growth, not 5 years from now. You need to restore it today. In the short term, we need to do massive stimulus. Otherwise, there's going to be another Great Depression. Where are we going to get this massive stimulus from? Mr. Rabini, who, by the way, said, you know, people that invest in gold are basically out of their mind and didn't think gold could go, well, maybe $1,500 an ounce. So now what they're saying is, and this is what they're all saying, is more stimulus. More stimulus means more digital dollars, means continued low interest rates, means a devaluation of all of the currencies that are doing this, such as the dollar and the euro.
Now, Gerald, looking at this, the banksters have created the Ponzi scheme. Madoff, said the first thing I learned when I got to Wall Street was that it's rigged, A, and B, it's a Ponzi scheme. And to compete in this, I had to do this. And he's absolutely right. Of all these criminals, he's just average. But the Lloyd Blankfeins, they're doing God's work. The Alan Greenspans, we've got to bow down to them while they devalue the dollar and wreck our economy and feed everything into their globalist system. Why is it that the more wrong the bankers are, the more we're supposed to fall down and worship them? Now, the mainstream media worships them more than ever, but they're losing all their viewers. All the polls show the general public is waking up to the bankers. So how long until they completely run out of time?
Well, the first part of your question, why do we worship them and why are they getting away with it? Who was the guy who began the whole deregulation of the Glass-Steagall Act that would have prevented the banksters from becoming these criminals that was put in place during the Great Depression so this wouldn't happen? What was his name? Robert Rubin? And who was he Treasury Secretary under? Gee, Bill Clinton. And who followed a couple of years later under George W. Bush? Hey, wasn't that Henry Paulson? Where did he come from, Alex? Gee, wasn't he the CEO of Goldman Sachs as well? And who's that guy now who's Obama's chief of staff? Oh, Bill Daley. Daley? From that wonderful Chicago machine, the Daley machine? Yeah, that Bill Daley. And where did he come from? Gee, wasn't he vice chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase? Doesn't anybody get it? Wall Street has hijacked Washington. It's the same game. Listen to what all of these politicians are saying. It's the same BS line. We got to deregulate industry. We got to give them a free ride so they can rape us more. Oh, and by the way, let's cut all the taxes for those rich guys and keep those multinationals like GE, who made $14 billion last year, paying no taxes at all as we give it to the little people. And just to make things a lot worse, let's increase the taxes for them. So the only key answers they keep coming up with is deregulation and cutting more taxes for the big guys. When is it going to collapse? As I've said, I've never seen a summer like this. I think we're going to see the winter of discontent. If it was an Arab Spring, you're going to see a U.S. You're going to start seeing an unraveling more and more every day as you watch the news. So October is my month that, and it's only a guesstimate, that we're going to see the big unraveling. But even if it doesn't happen in October, because you don't know what phony schemes they're going to come up with, it's going to happen eventually. And that's why I'm fully invested in gold.
Now, Gerald, you put out your forecast over a year ago, well over a year ago, and said that you believed that it would be evident that we were in a collapse by December of 2010. And if you looked at John Williams' shadow stats, if you looked at all the old numbers that government would use to put out more accurate breakdowns, we'd been in a depression for 2 years at that point. Now they're calling it, Geithner is on the Meet the Prostitutes and other shows, Geithner's calling it the greatest recession or the Great Recession. And we see the jobless numbers, the factory closings. We see all of this happening. And so more and more they're having to say, okay, it's a double dip recession. Well, a double dip recession that we never left is really a depression. So you've been proven right. It's just a deepening depression. So break down from your view how bad this depression is going to get and the response that we're going to see by government that's bought and paid for by these offshore banks. And then the reason I have you back here tonight, where we left off on the radio because we ran out of time, you were getting to the road warrior scenario, the violence scenario, and you've been talking about this. And today we had shootings at IHOPs and at H&R Blocks, and 48 people shot in New York and 2 dead cops. I mean, things are, metal thieves are stealing everything. They came through our office stealing stuff a few weeks ago. They're cutting the catalytic converters off of the cars while you're inside working. All the coffee shops I go to are being robbed. I mean, but the controlled prostitutes tell me the crime isn't going up, and they're laying off cops, and the cops that are left are going to be out there raising revenue, writing tickets to old ladies and arresting people with lemonade stands and banning gardens in your yard and SWAT teaming Gibson guitars. I mean, it's as if the government is taking PCP or something.
Look what's going on in the UK. And you looked at the riots, they call them hooligans and criminals. It's the same thing that's happening around the world. And it's going to happen here in the US. You know my saying, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And they're losing it. And you, as you mentioned, at the IHOPs, you're going to start seeing, just as they're getting, use the UK as your model. They're taking away all civil liberties. You read an article that comes out by your favorite girlfriend over there, Janet Napolitano, big sis. You have a crush on her. Or was it like you like to crush her? One of the two. But anyway, she's so happy we have all these surveillance cameras around. So as what happens is, the more the government loses control, the harder they are going to crack down on us. So when you see a society where so many young people have no education, they can't get jobs, they're whacked out on drugs that, you know, when I was growing up, nobody ever dreamed of, you think you're going to see a lot more violence, and the response is going to be, we got to crack down on crime. So the worst crime